Join us on a journey as we frolic through fields of filmmaking follies. Join us on this week's episode of Raspberry Fields Forever.
You suck.
What's up, everyone? Jesse Rodden here again to bring you another exciting episode of Raspberry Fields Forever. And with me, as always, is my co-host and heterosexual life mate, Mr. Kieran Gibbs. Kieran, how you doing today, bud?
Hey, baby. I'm real happy. I'm real happy.
It is nice to actually come across one that you enjoy, right?
And I feel like we're spoiling things a little bit, but like even I just can't bear the lead on this stuff because I'm overjoyed. I felt throughout and we're gonna get into it in our subsequent segments, but I can't remember like the first 10 minutes being like, oh my God, this is delightful. Like Xanadu was fun, but for the most part, I was like, what the fuck's going on here? And there's a hint of that in this, but I had a lovely time and I'm doing lovely. How are you, my friend?
I am doing fantastic. I mean, this movie put a smile on my face. This was the one that you didn't have to force me to watch. I've seen this movie before. I enjoy this movie. My dad showed me this movie back in the day. He could actually get away with it because it was a movie that surprisingly is rated PG.
That's PG the same way like what? Smoking in the Bandit's PG?
Yeah, I guess you're pretty much right. And this is kind of from that same era as well. Let's talk about it a little bit before we really get into the meat potatoes. Let's talk about the stars. Let's talk about the director. Let's talk about who was involved with this flick. Because no wonder I actually love this movie because, I mean, let's just go ahead and say it. Don Adams, the Get Smart TV show was great. I absolutely loved it. I mean, it was a spoof of your spy movies of the time, like your James Bonds. And Don Adams did a great job, a fantastic job of playing the bumbling spy character. On top of that, you also have Andrea Howard in this film, and you also have Sylvia Christel and Dana Eklar, who played the chief, Norman Lloyd, who played Carruthers, which probably my favorite character was Carruthers. I absolutely loved him and Don Adams back and forth.
Man, if I had to pick a favorite character, I really like the fellow with the one eye patch, the one arm, whose name escapes me right now.
Victorio Gassman, who played Norman Saint Sauvage, and the guy with the eye patch in the one hand, played both characters.
It was Dino, I think, was the name. But any hooser, here's the thing about the Nude Bomb that I think is going to be important to preface before we go to Here's the thing about the Nude Bomb that I think would be really important to just kind of overview before we get into the nitty gritty of this plot. The Nude Bomb, like we said earlier, it's a Get Smart film. Get Smart was a television series that from 1965 to 1970. This movie was made in 1980. So my biggest thing about this movie is in a few different places. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it was kind of ahead of its time. And this is another instance in which it's ahead of its time because this came out in 1980. What's going on right now, Jesse? The Legacy sequel. You can't go, 3 months without some new show being continued, be it Saved by the Bell, reinvention of Bel Air, a continuation of Boy Meets World, something like that.
Oh, absolutely. And Get Smart has had a reboot in recent years with Steve Carell, which honestly was a great person to play that character because him and Don Adams share so many similarities. It's ridiculous. I thought that was actually a pretty good movie whenever it came out.
It was directed by Clive Donner, and I Googled to see if there was any relation to Richard. I do not think there is.
Any other movies or anything like that he's done?
It's a film called The Guest. From 1963, Danger Man 1960, Old Dracula 1974, and then Nothing But the Best in 1964.
Okay. All right. Well, anyways, one of the writers and one of the co-creators is Mr. Mel Brooks, who is a legend, an icon in film and in comedy and in satire. Absolutely love him. I mean, he's the director for some of my favorite comedies of all time.
And the thing about this movie is the fingerprints of Mel Brooks are all over this. I don't know how direct he was in because it just says characters as far as credits. So I don't know how hands-on it was, but it has that air about it of just flatly delivered, completely nonsensical responses.
Yeah, I imagine they gave him the dialogue pass on this flick. Just they gave him free reign to put in as many clips as he wants. That's, not fact or anything. That's just me speculating. But like you said, it's just drenching to me with Mel Brooks's comedy.
And I really hate to, because normally I like to take a minute and just kind of delve into some things before we go into the actual plot of it. But I'll be honest, I'm so psyched to talk about this movie, about its story, about what happens, about all of the jokes. There are so many jokes in this movie that like are genuinely popping. And again, it's a PG movie, so they don't get to, well, back in the 80s, they get one fuck and they used it and it was hilarious. But all of this is just dialogue based and it's very bit heavy. And like 65 to 70% of the bits work. And nowadays in comedy, there are a bunch of like popular comedy movies that like 40% of beats work.